Welcome back to another episode of Bridging Science and Soul. As a reminder, on this podcast, we have Dr. Stephen Brewer, who is medical director at Canyon Ranch, and he's been a family physician for many years. And we have his daughter, Dr. Elizabeth Brewer, who is a doctor of clinical psychology, and she's an integrative psychotherapist, professor, yoga instructor, many hats.
Oh.
Uh, Stephen Brewer is the father who represents the science. Elizabeth Brewer is the soul and daughter. So,
Mm.
in the last episode, we explored science versus soul. And today's theme, we're going to explore curiosity and certainty. So, what happens to curiosity when we become certain? These kinds of questions. So, I want to first invite both Elizabeth and Steve to share ideas of what curiosity means to you. What does curiosity feel like to you guys? We'll start with you, Elizabeth.
Mm. Curiosity, I would say, is medicine, interestingly enough. Um, it feels like an expansion in my chest and like a widening. Um, my breath softens and something unclenches inside. It's kind of the opposite of performing expertise and letting my body listen before my mind can explain.
Hmm. Steve?
Curiosity to me is exploring the unknown. Um, when I have a patient that is sick and I can't explain why, it's my curiosity of what's going on. Why is it this person, or if I'm treating them, why aren't they not getting better? I've done everything I thought right. And what's the curiosity there? I'm constantly curious about all the new things that are happening in medicine right now, from the usage of AI and all the new studies that are coming out. I'm so curious about the new fascinating things that are happening in medicine. So every day is a day of curiosity and trying to learn more and nuances that are happening in the field of medicine.
I see. So, I'm hearing curiosity is about wanting to know more. Elizabeth, you mentioned listening with your mind. Is that what you said? Listening with your mind first?
Body
Body.
before mind.
Body
Yeah.
before mind. Say more about that.
Hmm. Well, it's interesting because I feel that I'm going to speak to the opposite of what you're asking, which is certainty. The mind, I have found, wants certainty, wants an answer, especially in the field of healing, where we want answers. We want to know what's wrong with me. How long will this last? Um, and so curiosity is this different way of knowing. Um, and when I say that curiosity first shows up in my body, it's okay, so I'm sitting here and I could say that I'm taking the curious stance and my father's taking the certain stance. And it feels like this like narrowing of experience. But I feel more at ease in my body when I am curious, when I maybe suspend what I think that I know. Um, and that reflects in the body. So my body feels healthier when it's curious.
Interesting. Steve, I'm curious. Do you have the same experience with curiosity in your body?
Oh, I go back to the what it's an old saying that, I feel it in my gut. I have a gut reaction, a gut reaction that just I'm not certain about what's going on here. And this, when you talk about, it's more the certainty thing for me, like as she alluded to, it's if I'm doing a procedure, I may know the science, I may know everything it should be happening, but my gut is something's wrong here. And so that's where I feel it. I feel usually in my gut that things are not progressing the way I want to in terms of the treatment of a patient. So, and that and that is one of I think it's I don't know where it comes from, if it's subconscious or whatever, but when my gut is upset when I'm trying to make a decision about treatment, or my gut it will oftentimes react in certain ways. So that's where I feel it in the body is my, when things I don't feel that certainty is there. I wish I could make sure this is the right path to treat this patient. But when I don't feel that, I get a gut reaction and things aren't right.
So would you say that the curiosity kind of arises from a lack of certainty with you? Both of you, actually.
Um, yes and no. I think things may just start off because I'm curious about a new disease. I'm curious about something I've read. I'm very curious about something aspect. So um, and I may not be certain at all. The only time I look at the certainty aspect is when I'm trying to make a decision about something, and I want to make certain as best as I can that this is the right pathway for me to treat this person. Curiosity is usually my beginning in a process of science. Like I'm curious about the this terrible new disease at the time when COVID came. Where is it coming from? How did it get here? And the more I'm curious, the more I'll explore, and the more I explore, the more I know, and the more I know, the better I can heal. So um, I always, um, so I think curiosity is the beginning. Certainty is when I'm finally making that final decision. I want to be as certain as I can that I'm making the right decision.
Interesting. Elizabeth.
Well, listening to my dad speak and in my own practice, I think a lot about the masculine ways of knowing, what we might call the culture of certainty. And in Western psychology and medicine, certainty gets kind of dressed up as competence. So we are rewarded for being linear or rational or efficient. And my dad used the word right. And it's this kind of knowing that moves towards control. So let's measure it, let's name it, let's define it, let's solve it. And I wouldn't say that's wrong, but I would say it's partial because the body knows a different kind of truth. So if the masculine current says know and act, then the more feminine current might say listen and allow. And when I talk about masculine and feminine, I have both masculine and feminine within me, ways of knowing. So do both of you. And so curiosity, in this sense, I would say is a feminine intelligence. So it opens the nervous system instead of tightening it. And we can literally feel the difference when we're curious. I mean, our breath slows, our pupils widen, and our vagus nerve actually signals safety. And then when we're certain, the body constricts. So the prefrontal cortex, our thinking mind, goes offline a bit because we've decided. I could bring in science here, which is kind of ironic, but I'll pause there for now.
No, do it. Bring in the science. I want to hear.
Dad, do you want to start?
No, I'm listening. Um, the day I'm not, I'm going on with this whole process that we're talking about here. And the day that I'm not curious about certain aspects of where the body goes right or where the body goes wrong, I think I need to look for another profession. Because I think it's so, even though I know when we started this conversation, we've talked about this topic. You thought I would only want to do the certainty aspect, and you would be more the curious one. But the more as we talk about this, I realize that
Mm.
my curiosity in how the body works, my curiosity in how the body fails or does right, has led me into the field of medicine. I think it's fascinating. I'm fascinated when I sit down and think about what the body does is just movement of a hand, just doing that. And versus so you see somebody with Parkinson's and they can't do it because it's just shaking. And what makes me be able to do this and a Parkinsonian patient do that, the abnormal? And I'm so curious of how does it normal? How is it not normal? You know? And I've always been the curious type. I've always wanted to know how things work. I want to know um, and or I want to know why things went bad. And so it's funny. I'm leaning more for the curiosity more than the certainty portion of this discussion than I am. The certainty portion is when I finally make up my mind that I think this is the pathway, but I always give myself a little out. You know, like maybe this is if it doesn't work, what's another pathway? I always hate it when you have to make a decision in medicine, whether it's either you make the one decision, it's either going to be right, or if you make the wrong decision, it's going to be wrong. And that's always a very frightening decision maker. And I always want, if I'm at that point where I think I'm certain, I will usually tell the patient, I'm 90% certain about this. How do you feel? Do you want to proceed this way? Because I really think it's really important. And I think this is the different way, but I think I was in that transition between the old style medicine and the new style medicine. In the old style medicine, it was like the doctor would see the information, listen to the patient, make up their mind, say, this is what you're going to do. And and now I think I'm very much involved with, okay, here's what we ought to do to talking to the patient, and here are my options now, if they say, well, what would you suggest? I'll say, if I was the person, the patient, this is my reasoning for doing that. And that's why I would proceed that way. But this is not, you had to buy into this because as Elizabeth will tell you, if you're trying to go a certain direction and whatever your health is, and you're not convinced that that's the right way, the odds and your potential for success really kind of, I think, goes down. I think when the patient feels really confident about what you're saying about your certainty to do the practice, I think it makes a big difference in their healing. What do you think, Elizabeth? Oh, we weren't going to talk with each other, but we're talking with each other, right? Because I want to curious to hear what you got to say.
Well, I'll turn it to Zale first.
Well, I am curious what you have to say. And in your response, I'm curious because you mentioned moving away from the idea of right versus wrong.
Hmm.
And um, even as Steve spoke, I, you know, I do get the sense that figuring out what's right and what's wrong or what the right path is a high priority. And so I'm
Hmm.
curious in your response, Elizabeth, if you would speak about how you think about that.
Well, it's interesting that we just heard my father speak about curiosity. And now I want to share a little bit of science through a lens of certainty. And then another question that is, arising for me is, are we overcompensating because of our maybe ways of knowing? So my dad's adding in curiosity and I'm adding in more certainty. Um, just something to think about. And to answer your question about right and wrong, neuroscience actually shows that curiosity is one of the brain's most life-giving states. So when we are curious, our dopamine reward circuit lights up. It's the same one that fires up when we fall in love or we eat Grater's ice cream.
People need to know what Grater's ice cream is on the ground.
Well,
It's
go ahead, share about Grader's ice cream.
no, it's a fabulous ice cream that is so totally unhealthy that I should not even know. People should not know that I know about it. But it's an ice cream developed out of Cincinnati, Ohio, and it's Grater's. It's GR. This is not. We're not. They're not paying us anything for advertisement. It's GRAETERS. It's every community or any region has their whatever, and this ice cream is just really pretty good. But go on, Elizabeth.
I grew up in Ohio with my dad, where Grader's ice cream exists.
Nice.
So, a study actually from UC Davis found that when people were curious, the hippocampus, which is the brain's memory hub, became more active and they remembered everything they learned during that state, not just the thing they were curious about. So, curiosity literally primes the brain for learning, and then it makes the world stick. So, that fits. If I, see it in medicine, um, dopamine isn't just about pleasure, it's about motivation and exploration. And when we are curious, our bodies release more dopamine, which actually lowers stress and increases flexibility in the nervous system. So, right, wrong, I'm not really answering your question. Um, because curiosity is a biological state of openness. So, if we look at it through the lens of polyvagal theory, Stephen Porges' work, curiosity is only possible when the body feels safe. So, when we're in the ventral vagal state, the system says it's okay to explore. And then when we're threatened, our world shrinks and curiosity disappears. So, curiosity isn't a luxury, it's a sign that the body feels safe enough to connect. So maybe when we've arrived at a place of right or wrong, the body doesn't feel safe.
So I'm curious, Elizabeth, in your work as a psychotherapist, even as a professor, right?
I love it, Zale. You said you're curious.
Yeah, right. um, there are certain times when I assume you need to make decisions, right? Uh, or even impart knowledge. And so the question to you is, how do you make those decisions if you're in a constant state of openness? Do you at some point need to narrow the scope a little in order to go in a certain direction?
Well, there's a real biological comfort in being sure. And our brain loves patterns and closure. And too much of it can create what we call in psychology, cognitive rigidity, where we stop updating our models of the world. We also call it in the field a need for cognitive closure. So when it's strong, people grab onto the first answer and then hold it tightly, even if new information contradicts it. And that rigidity is what blocks transformation. And I teach a class, well, two classes that actually have transformation in the title, which is Introduction to Transformative Learning, as well as Transformative Communities of Practice. So when we choose certainty over curiosity, um, we kind of trade movement for control. So it's hard. It's really difficult. Um, and I would say building safe conditions for learning, building safe conditions for healing is important so that curiosity can emerge.
I think what is interesting as we're talking here and listening to you, Elizabeth, and how it seems like the person is um, much more open to maybe deeper thought when they're in this curiosity phase than when they're in this certainty phase. And I can think in situations in medicine where I want that person to be very certain, and the other times I want that person to be very open. And for example, in a crisis situation, and actually, if you talk to most, it seems to me in my experience, most trauma surgeons or ER doctors are more certain people, because they're very black and white. We got to make this decision now. Boom, boom, and this is what we're going to do because it may be life and death situation. And you want to be, and when you're in a crisis, it seems like whenever I'm in a crisis situation, you want somebody to stand forth and say, this is what we're going to do. Okay. And it happens in medicine. If it's somebody's having a heart attack or they heart quit beating, you want somebody in the room going, boom, boom, boom. This is what you're going to do because they seem to make that situation best. Now, when you have time to sit in a room, contemplate a case, contemplate life, and you're sitting in that room with the person, the certain person, the black and white person, they aren't much fun because they are, like they're like what you're saying. They are not, don't seem to be open to thought. They are not, and I want the endocrinologist. I want the rheumatologists and some of these other doctors or the neurologists are trying to contemplate the situation, the whole factor. I want them to be curious about the thing. I want them to be open about it. And if they don't have to make a direct decision at that point, these people are much more fun. When you're out in a party, you want to be with the curious people, much more so, I think, than the certain people, unless suddenly a loud noise goes off or there's a fire at your place where you are. You want the certain people to step forward and say, that's the route out of here. Let's all go. Boom. But it's, I think the person that can bend and go from certainty to curiosity they're the gems of the world. Okay. But you don't see a lot of those people. Um, but in medicine, God, I think people are directed whether or not they're the more curious person or the more certain person out. And that's what I've seen, I think, in real life too.
Hmm. So I'm hearing there's kind of a balance to be struck. If you're
Yes.
able
Mm.
to, if you're able to, move between curiosity and certainty depending on the situation, then you may
Yeah,
be able to
those
make a better decision.
I like those people.
Great
Hmm.
Yeah,
people.
I think we all try to attain that role. But I thought it was interesting listening to Elizabeth and talking about about dopamine and in the curious phase, we have higher levels of dopamine. We're able to make, to think deeper about the situation and be maybe make a better decision. I don't know, but so yeah, I want to and I think everybody on this call here is trying our best to be curious, but be able to not be so wishy-washy we can't make any decisions, you know?
Go ahead, Elizabeth. Curious on your thoughts.
Well, when a client says, I already know why I'm like this, they are in the story of certainty, and it's the one that keeps them stuck. But when they say, I wonder what's happening in me right now, it's like their whole system softens. And so, research, I am bringing in the science, shows that when we're
Good.
met with curiosity and empathy, the amygdala, which is our brain's threat detector, quiets down and the prefrontal cortex comes online. And that is what we call in psychology emotional regulation. It's also what Dr. Richard Schwartz calls self leadership. So curiosity isn't passive, it's the body's way of saying it is safe enough to change.
Are you certain about that?
I
Well,
wonder.
I'm curious, Elizabeth. Um, does certainty ever play a role in what you do? Do you ever want to be certain? And maybe not 100% certain, but do you ever want to be or to act certain, let's say?
That's a great um, question. And I remember when I was in my doctoral program for clinical psychology, and I was taking history of psychology. And our first assignment, which was for the whole quarter, was to research a female psychologist. And all of us in the class were dumbfounded by the fact that all of the psychologists in a field that is predominantly female, all the psychologists that we knew were men. That's something that I will invite listeners to be curious about. I won't go into the details of that. Um, and so, to answer your question, are there um, times when certainty is professionally, do I want to be certain? Of course. Of course, I want to be certain. Um, and I think that that can then limit the healing process because, and why did I bring in the female psychologist versus the male psychologist, which are the ones that we know? Um, because I would say that these particular male psychologists that we are aware of, that we know about, um, feel certain about what they say, and that that certainty is somehow legitimized over curiosity. So that's something I'm curious about, um, which is why probably I felt the need to bring in science here, to legitimize what I know.
Mm. When is it when is it okay to act certain even if you're not?
So, Zale, I'm going to share a little bit about you if that's okay.
Okay.
So, for our listeners who do not know, Zale is a musician, is a performer, and performance, I have always, from a more maybe artistic way of knowing, which is also, you could maybe, I won't give it a label because it's not in a box. It's not in a square box like my dad feels like he is. Um, but there is the phrase fake it till you make it. Um, and so I think maybe what we're kind of scratching the surface of right now is the relational piece, which is how can I feel safe enough in your presence that I trust you? And we have somehow legitimized certainty as feeling safe enough in your presence that I can trust you. So I'm curious why it's not, I feel safe enough in your presence because you're curious about my symptoms. Um, and I don't have the answer to that. I don't know. But that is what is being evoked for me in that question.
What's your perspective on that, Steve? Because you did mention in a certain crisis situation, you want someone certain. Why is that?
Because they're going to make a decision now. They're not going to sit and contemplate, oh, Well, they're bleeding out over in the corner. Let me go think about this and make a decision whether or not I think I should operate or not operate. In the meantime, this person may not make it. So I think certainty in an acute situation is important. I think it, and it doesn't always have to be an acute situation. You don't want to walk in and see a practitioner and they're going, well, you may have this, you may have that. You go, I've come to you for your expertise, for your knowledge, and it's okay to say, with all what you give me, I don't know the answer. Okay. I am certain of that, you know, but from what you've told me and from my knowledge, I think most likely this is your scenario, and most likely this would be the best scenario for you. Let's talk about it. But I think it's you just when you want if I'm going to go and I've got a leak in a pipe in the house. I don't want a plumber to come in and it's leaking all over the place going, well, I think it's coming up from your bathroom upstairs. Well, it might be coming from your bathroom down. I'm not, it's probably, you go, find out what do you think it is. Let's deal with it. And I think we all like to have a little certainty there about, I'm confident this is what we're going to do. Um, I just think when there's a kind of a generalized decision about how I want to proceed with something with your health, these are some options. These are probably some better options. Let's think about how do we approach it, and let's talk about all these different options. But in acute situations, or just when you sometimes you get so tired of people running you around all the time, you just want somebody to say, "Look, this is what we need to do." And I think there's a place for the certainty, even if even in a non acute crisis situation. You just want somebody to feel like, I've got your back. I think I'm pretty much sure what's going on here. I'm pretty certain that this is what's going on. Okay, gang.
Well,
Oh, you want to,
s-
there's a little more?
yes, Father, there's a little more.
Well, I'm curious on your perspective, Elizabeth, because there's a certain discomfort, right, in not knowing, and sometimes we want to offload decision making, right? And so we look to
All the
someone
time.
certain, and I want to get
Mhm.
your perspective on that, whether it's valid and just, your general thoughts on it.
Well, as both of you have said, in medicine, certainty can save lives. So, yeah, when a patient is crashing, you can't pause for wonder. You actually need clear protocols and quick decisions. So, certainty gives direction when time is short and the risk is high. It is a stabilizing force. And the brain's pattern recognition, the muscle memory of training, they let us act when reflection would cost too much. And so, yeah, certainty in those moments is like a solid floor, and it's the masculine function at its best. It's clarity, it's protection. But when certainty stays too long, it starts to harden. So what begins as support can then turn into armor. So, a skill that I feel I would like to deepen and develop is when to hold the line and when to soften it. So, we need both the masculine and the feminine. We need both the precision and the presence, the science and the soul. And the trick is to move between them, to find flexibility rather than live on one side. And I think of certainty as a nervous system response too. So when the body is flooded, certainty actually regulates. It gives us a sense of safety. But once that safety is restored, if we know how, we can bring that curiosity back online. So maybe certainty is the bridge that we cross to curiosity, not a cage that we stay in. So certainty, since my dad uses metaphors, I'll try and use one, as first aid, and then curiosity as recovery. And both are a part of being human. You know, one, yeah, keeps us alive, and the other keeps us awake and relational.
Cool. So yeah, that's a good bridge. Um, we see we kind of need both the masculine and the feminine, the certain and the curious, and staying in one mode through all situations is rigid, and having the flexibility to move between certainty and uncertainty seems to be a well balanced mode of existence. Very cool. I really appreciated hearing both of your perspectives. And to close, I would love to posit some questions for the listeners to ponder. And one question is, where do I feel tightness around needing to be right? If you feel in your body that in a particular situation you want to be right all the time, where do you feel that? And how can you be more curious? What's one thing you can do this week to be a little more flexible and curious about something? The third question is, how does curiosity sound and feel in your body? And how does certainty sound and feel in your body? Notice the dichotomy or the balance between the two. And yes, I'd like to give it to you guys for any final thoughts on curiosity or certainty.
I'll just say real briefly that I just think this is, I love the fact that the balance piece is not one or the other. If we're really going to move through life, if we're going to, we need times to have that certainty so we have direction. But when we have direction, we want to be curious to look either side of the road. I'm walking with my sister this morning through in the Midwest with all the leaves changing and the fall smells are in the air. If I was just certain, I just know that my path to get my 2 miles in for my walk. But because I was curious, I was able to grasp and look around and see the different colors. And so it was um, the certainty gave me the path to get home, and the curiosity made me much more fulfilled in what the rest of the day was going to be because I just love seeing this whole area out here in the Midwest during the fall season.
Elizabeth?
Well, as my dad's talking about the fall leaves, that, there's this cycle, there's this rhythm, um, natural rhythm, nature's rhythm. And there's a rhythm between knowing and not knowing, tightening and releasing, thinking and feeling. And life itself, like the trees, flow between certainty and curiosity. We take a deep breath in and deep breath out. And we get in trouble when we hold our breath in either direction. So, the practice that I want to take from this time together is not to choose one, but to learn the timing, when to stand firm and when to open, and how to let the rhythm move through us without trying to, thinking about you, Zale, as a musician, control the beat.
Beautiful. Well, thank you both, and thank you to all the listeners. Um, Thank you for joining us on Science and Soul. And remember, stay curious, stay kind to the parts of you that want answers as well. Take care.
I
Bye.
love that.